And have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. For it is a shame even to speak of those things which are done of them in secret. But all things that are reproved are made manifest by the light. For whatsoever doth make manifest is light.
Just a little lie, she said, a little lie, trying to hide the truth inside from the light inside of the eye. The flesh may be weak, the spirit stronger than I, to discern the vicious plank from another speck in the eye. Just a little lie, she said, a little lie, trying to use the devil's darkness for truth she wants to deny. Nicolaitan evil, Jesus despises Jezebel doctrine with Balak and Balaam's abstinent ties. Yeah, the world's gone nuts, backwards in its design, looking like it's progressing, collapsing from inside. Hypocritical doctrine, alchemeta, ethnology, social science of physical, minus spiritual mind, carbon, hydrogen and oxygen bonds, banking on atoms and particles, parting partly in theorem, recombined, combing, combustion, and complete composite for combination. H2O broken down by the same electrification. The spirit of God is not the belly's beast.
Alright, good morning, good people made in God's image, men and women, young and old. So I had posted that picture about the Pizeoelectric. I would not really want to call it a discovery, and despite the whole having to go out with the Discovery Land Rover last night, and honestly, that dude talking about a rehab drink was quite interesting to find that the energy drinks that have tobacco juices in them, and a lot of people not understanding that tea, they are literally served without asking which kind of leaf it is, knowing how many kind of teas there are. Thousands. It's a general Google search. How many kinds of teas are there? Known to a certain point, at least identifiable. And they're still growing. There are many more, and you can literally use anything as a tea. By the time we used to have flavored like orange, grape, watermelon, well, the lemon tea was always there. It was something people just did. But honestly, those kind of tea bags with the actual flavorings of lemon, watermelon, orange, and all sorts of things, grapes, blackberry, blueberry, and cherry, and all that were actually there. So it's quite interesting that the lack of knowledge for people becomes much of where their user experience is also involved. If you want to call it creator experience, truthfully, by God's standard, because he's the one who created us, firstly having given us dominion over all things, being the creator of all things, and we users of the things that he made. But technically, him making us in his image has us creating things from the things that he gave us to steward amongst. So this portion is still a small clip, and I would have wanted to present much more with more what can I say, experiential, since the Partakers 3 is an involvingly experiential reflect on even people's own individual lives. And how I mention every time that when I was not allowed to well, I was allowed to, but they just didn't want to for sake of price. Well, that's still a lie. Being bought radio controlled cars and boats and such like that. We used to have these little toys that started as very small. The radio controlled cars got a lot bigger, then got small again, then got bigger. But by the time radio controlled planes and people had gone through the kite phase, flying kites in the wind, and well, what I would do, because Legos were technically my favorite budget toy, if you will, that my dad would even make it as if it's a prize by the time you get your results at school, for English class and math class, and as you're growing up in grade school, it's one of those things. So the ones that came with the boat base where you'd build on top of it, I would get, if I had a radio controlled car where the wheel wasn't working or something, because the treads for the wheels would wear off or something, or the wheels wouldn't be fixed to a point where it was long lasting for some things. The engine would still be working. You'd put a battery in, it would work and such. So you'd be like, okay, what can you do with this? If you get the engine out and then you strap it onto a boat base of a Lego building boat kit, you can tie a battery on it as well. The circuits were basic, and literally the example I'm giving right now is how it used to not be too much of a fuss for the positive to negative flow And the quote-unquote argument of negative to positive flow, or backdraft, if you will, or feedback of electronics was quite an issue going through those days in people's theorism, based on the same reason why things that are kind of opinionated points of schools of thoughts, like how proteinism or carbohydratism is literally politics to a degree of understanding, where people didn't go back to understanding that everything God made is good. How we find that carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen are the base elements of alcohols, they're the base elements of oils, they're the base elements of sugars, they're the base elements of proteins and carbohydrates. And to be quite honest, there's nothing that doesn't have those elements in them: carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and everything else. Quote unquote was disputed the arrangement or order of the elements. So, about the little engine that you would strap onto the bottom of a Lego boat kit, right? You'd literally have to fashion a fan, because at least that much we understood how to make flippers are like very, I would literally need to do it now, but with a piece of paper, if you ever made paper planes, you'd know how to make the flaps on the back of the planes by cutting 2 slits on the wings of it, and then, you know, pushing them up or down depending which way you want the plane to twist, you know, and or if you don't want it to twist, or if you just want it to lift, or if you want it to go down. That was something that people just did. It was normal. Quote unquote remnants of origami, if you will, but really not. I met a young sister at a point in time who was able actually to make boxes, like very fast. Like, it was interesting. It was just something she was very keen and happy to do at a point in time. And then she just gave it to me, like, wow, okay, so that's interesting how the 20-year-olds compared to the 30-year-olds, and this was about 20, I'd have to be specific with the year. Anyway, but the point being that that was actually something fun for them to do. Some people, it depends what you choose to do, like how in grade school, it was quite a quote-unquote yo-yo fad. We had yo-yos, if you know what a yo-yo is. Then they mechanicized the yo-yos, where this was a thing to have them sleep, quote-unquote, or, you know, you put them down and then it spins and spins and spins, then you can pull it up. You could do this with the ones where it was just string and a wooden, the wooden round sides, or depending on, you know, the development of it, then the mechanic inside had like teeth in the round washer, if you will. It was like a plastic washer with a rubber rim, and a bunch of things happened after that. There were even lights put into them, like plasticized sides, and then that was quote-unquote glamorized, if you will. This is before the little digital Tamagotchis were the first digital pets. It's like a little, literally kind of like a cell phone with no signal or calculate anything. You turn it on, or Game Boy, if you will, very basic. And you choose which kind of quote-unquote digital animal that you want to take care of and feed it, and if it sleeps or wakes up, it's like an alarm clock reminder. A bunch of things that were taught in that point in time, where we would talk about connectivity and people being able to do that, and well, that's what ended up happening afterwards. But the theories of it actually having to be physically connected versus wirelessly, okay, that's another thing due to magnetics. So the showing right now has to do with the circuits going forward or backwards, positive to negative or negative to positive. And what I noticed, and most people may have not, but when LEDs, which are very, very small light bulbs that are very, very bright, compared to the big light bulbs that we have, reminiscent of the fluorescent transition, which were technically more durable, long-lasting lights compared to the original tungsten filament, because of the manufacture being very quote-unquote flimsy, but really not the case, because in the LED you actually have to do the exact same thing that you do with the tungsten. But some people's dispute was always, but it's plastic, but well, what about the gap between the metals, and do you have to put a gas in it? And the developments of a lot of things had problems with people's either secrecies or unawares, but this one was quite striking, because this LED here, as I noticed, doesn't both sides, like if you put the battery on the positive and negative of it, it doesn't just light up. This started happening when I was how old, because we would check these things out maybe if you had to set up a Christmas tree, or, you know, plug in lights and just look at the circuitry and the electronics of things. I'm gonna actually kind of have to let me show you the small setup here. What's interesting is this comes from a small kit. Actually, I have to show the box. that was bought in South Africa, and I was interested to find the year of it because the magnet in the motor does not seem to be working at all with a 12-volt battery. This is 2011, 07 of the manufacture of it, and it's supposed to at least help kids understand certain things, but there's a few elements that are kind of, if you will, some would say missing. So I think actually I'm gonna have to set up the camera in a still place to do this in the proper manner. Let me actually do that and just stop the take and cut it for a second. Okay, so I'm a bit sideways to the camera, but that's just so at least the front cam can see the items on the table. Let me just, I think I dropped it, the LED light. When I lean back looking for the box. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Alright, so if you look closely in the LED, and I'm not sure how clear, it's probably going to come out clearer in the playback when I see it myself. The between elements of these two that go into the light bulb, right? You'll see them on the other side of the camera. The back cam is always much more evident for those things. Alright, so, and I do have a magnifying glass, but honestly I had not checked to see, will we be able to like see it clearly, and what will be the zoom capacity of the camera, and the, yeah, it's different, and it also changes the camera zoom itself. So literally it's just a very small thing to connect the one side of this to the other side, and notice that okay, you gotta make contact. There we go. The light is working that way. Now if I turn it the other way, with the same touch and impact, that it actually isn't. That's significantly different. Firstly, for the sakes of the kind of diodes and anodes, there were different kinds that if it was the right pair, it could turn on both ways. Okay, that's the one that doesn't work. Ooh, just to make sure, because some people end up getting superstitious and like it's different or something. No, okay, so that's the on way, right? Now literally to turn it that way, it's not working. So it's quite honest, like understanding, it's not full contact there, by the way, when you do make, okay, like there we go. The light was quite bright at a different angle concerning the actual kind of plastic that's there. So this is a 12-volt battery. Oh, there we go, more light, really awesome. So between the understanding of this, it actually doesn't work now right now. Like, this is the funny thing. I put the connectors on both sides from the battery, and these small kind of motors didn't have to be that high voltage. You wouldn't want to say that it is right now, that would be really bad, but this kit being from 2011, this is 2024, people's arguments if magnets ever lost their magnetism, or you had to remagnetize them, and we learned this about how you would magnetize something. Like there, technically this is actually becoming magnetized. There is an interaction happening there. You can actually see it's, oh, okay, so it's a very interesting metal, of where usually there used to be copper based cables that were used in LEDs. So if you look at your earphones when you have them, these are them turned up this way. Now what they have inside, if you haven't noticed, is a copper wiring which sits inside the frame, and according to the electric current, it's now magnetic to the current. That's what makes it vibrate, and then you actually hear a sound. If some people didn't know that sound is from vibration, that's not a good thing. So you can find that when these magnets are this way, that is a very, you'll just look at the distance, and you can tell that it's very, very quick to come together. This side is about the same, but it depends now where you're actually hovering it over. It's quite interesting because back to back is the least magnetic at a point in time. It's quite like it doesn't even do that portion of like biting so hard. Like that's a very small distance without it snapping to this point where it was. Okay, you can actually feel it's a little bit almost the same. Then you turn it up this way. That's very strong, like very, very strong, like compared to the backwardsness here, which is very little. It's very little compared to that. So those are some things that a lot of people wouldn't understand when I was mentioning piezoelectrics. This is the button in your earphone that has the mouthpiece for when you plug it into a cell phone. And it's a piezoelectric button. Very small, of course. And how I arrange these... Sorry, I'm literally going to have to take the phone off the stand. Was that you can see the inside of an actual piezoelectric clicker from a lighter, which in its state like this has the little spark that, well, there it's kind of going towards my finger, right? But it depends now on a bunch of things, because when in the actual holding, encasing, this rubber has to be at the bottom, technically for conductivity. This also has conductivity. There were also arguments if plastic conducts electricity or not. It depends which kind, and they all have different quote-unquote charges. Is technically almost a political statement. So when I mention cubic zirconian stones, there's this portion here of the actual element in the cabling, the glue around it. It breaks here because when you actually, like, if you hammer it that way, you don't necessarily have to hammer it, but to crack it open like this. But honestly, you can actually tell the difference. This bottom one has a circuitry of it. It sits in the cylinder of it, where this is the base bit, as you can see, and it comes out from the middle. It's actually got a inner casing. If you can just zoom in enough, I'd have to put some light so you can actually see a bit more. There you go. And it should be a bit visible if you can zoom in from there at that moment. A little rim around the actual stone. So this is on the top. The spring is there. That speed and distance difference between the magnets here. This is actually magnetic. Quite very. You see, the point being that exactly is what helps the quote-unquote charge get to, and I want to say piping, but honestly it's the cabling, which is supposed to make contact with where the gas is filled and comes out through the nozzle. Interesting part is that people used to have arguments whether you could fill these up or refill them. It's really not a secret that if you take that off, and that is literally how they're manufactured, filled from that side, while they are recyclable and such. So this is a lithium battery. If you're a Zimbabwean right now, you should be happy and very understanding why in the mention of and I used the word 1,000 square kilometers, or you could even start with 100 meters in a cubed direction from any place in the ground. You'll be able to find minerals of a general majority. And this has been an issue with people's lack of knowledge, again. So this is what we actually have across the globe, earthwide in spirit and truth. The literal example between the battery and the LED was for, well, where we are now with electric cars. It's technically one of those things, a bunch of things in communications as well. Even just mentioning the pressure sensitivity on your touch screen, what functions your modes and routines actually has, and some of the information collected you may not have noticed. The speed of your tapping, this how quote unquote your phone learns, your way of typing or your words and etc. and a bunch of things. It's a lot of stuff that people don't realize, but it's very helpful and important in terms of productivity and actual progression and development. So the part that had to do with this LED light was literally just about, they are both silver contacts, but these silvers are different kinds of compounds. The ones that are similar to make the circuit, whether you put the battery this way or that way, are different from the ones that are like this. And the thing is, you have to note the various differences. Some will quote unquote last longer. Some will because of being made this way or being made the other way. Some will also, what can I say, seem as if it's for specific appliances. Making things for very specific appliances is the whole point. Quartz crystals are what are used to make these kind of microphones. The reason when you get to a studio and you're recording vocals as a recording artist is because the frequency range and the amount of pickup, if you will, is much larger on a diaphragmed microphone. A diaphragm is literally this kind of thing, but now we have gold leaf microphones, we have cardioid hybrid crystal sort of microphones. There's a bunch of different kinds. These are earphones, by the way, just so you note. And the thing is, yes, you can play back sound from small things like that. Is why we have the small earphones that also come with the circuits here you have in your phones every time it's an accessory kit. But the issue with people is not understanding the portion of applied creativity and supplying what you need for what you need. Not just randomly, you can just use any kind of microphone, or you can just use any kind of earphones. No, if you want to mix a song down or create music that is very, very specific, that if you want to play it on small earphones and headphones like this, and on big loudspeakers with subwoofers, mid-range and bass speakers, you are going to need very refined and high quality, and that's an interesting word to revamp or actually re-understand microphones. So it's a bunch of things in only 10 minutes. Like I said, I would have wanted to present it better, but the issue is a problem with that part of people's understanding. You would hope the magnetism of the motor isn't now at a higher voltage, because what I've understood about fermentation and firmamentation is an also great part of knowing why the waters above are separated from the waters below in Genesis, and what the firmament is, meaning is the kingdom of God within. And even when people do distillery by electrolysis and having the productivity of things, technically a mimic of their actual existence when they are in the state that they are, people thinking or being lied to that plastic doesn't degrade. When you've left paper in the sun, you've always come back at a time and seen that, okay, well, quote unquote, it's lost the color from the print. And was it the print that was less quality, or was it the A, B, and C, and D? Those aren't really the issues. Even just an empty plastic bottle without a lid, and then a plastic bottle with a lid on, versus a plastic bottle with liquids in it as well, though the plastic itself already has liquids, as we've understood from carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen being the base elements of basically everything. And honestly, that being very much robbery for people to be lied to that alcohol is really just hydrogen and oxygen bonds and breakings, and people having technically political disputes or differentiations of their will against flavors. Really, it's at that point in time. It's an interesting thing, because when you look at the green leaves that we have, the chlorine based flavorings and things that we literally use everywhere are derivatives of the same sort of thing. And it's really robbery for people and kids to be told, well, etc and whatnot is the reason why people are getting drunk, or etc is why the reason people are acting suspicious or lying, or etc. No, honestly, those are the problems, the lying part. Whether you're drinking, eating, or not, lying is going to be a form of drunkenness. Sexual immorality, another one. The stealing, killing, willful harming the conscience of oneself. Anybody thinking themselves a lying in trap and weight of any of those things literally the problem. That's another teaching and doctrine issue, to be quite honest. We've learned that, and everybody knows that as a human being and a person. So always take note of the fact that experience is a learning thing, and we do not stop learning in life. This is one of those actual facts and matters. So yeah, definitely at least had to do that small bit and make it as short as possible for now. Better, more equipped revealings would be awesome, but we have those going on in so many places. A lot of the educational reels that people actually do have on Facebook are totally missed by people. A lot of the social media education based anything, even just people's searches for things on the internet and such, are technically up to them, to be quite honest. So complaints at a point in time are kind of weird. When I noticed, just finding out those facts, what are the base elements of carbohydrates, what are the base elements of sugar, what are the base elements of proteins, what are the base elements of alcohol, and then basic search on, okay, well, it's a piezoelectric lighter, because, you know, even just getting to the word piezoelectric, you'd think of how someone would get there. Well, technically, you'd have to understand that you can look at what a lighter is, what elements are in a electric lighter, and from there you can actually be able to understand that much. This is a thing about people's informational interests, other than in how to perform evil or do evil or think evil or be evil. Those are totally different things. So yeah, I'm gonna leave the video there, and I'll catch y'all later. It's, like I said, supposed to be an informative, experiential Partakers 3 blog, but the Word of God is very equipped with at least the basic wisdom for just about everything in life. When we're told as sound doctrine and teaching that everything God created is good, nothing to be refused or considered waste or considered bad or evil or toxic. We're talking about objects, soils, waters, plants, animals, and all breathables. That's where people try to objectize or itemize each other, which is really not a good thing at all. And if you try and even go in the opposite direction, there's something wrong with the person who would even want to do that. Would have to consider themselves what they think themselves. You know, so everybody's made a man or a woman, people given dominion over all things. The stewardship that we have amongst is stewardship. So yeah.
Now the Spirit speaketh expressly, that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils, speaking lies and hypocrisy, having their conscience seared with a hot iron, forbidding to marry, and commanding to abstain from meats, which God hath created to be received with thanksgiving of them which believe and know the truth. The Gospel according to John, chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. There was a man sent from God, whose name was John. The same came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all men through him might believe. He was not that light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. For John the Baptist came neither eating bread nor drinking wine, and ye say, He hath a devil. The Son of Man is come, eating and drinking, and ye say, Behold, a gluttonous man, and a winebibber, and a friend of publicans and sinners. But wisdom is justified of all her children. And one of the Pharisees desired him, that he would eat with him. And he went into the Pharisee's house, and sat down to meat.
7 seasonal season, the earth's manifest genesis, and light of salt being a soul we seasoned with happiness and thanksgiving, serious joy, and even the animals knowing their food, like the plants growing even cabbages. Chickens like oranges, walking, seeing and foraging, pears and apples between birds and fishes of water's origin. Grounded our cattle and beef with crawling and creeps, without the offer keeps our Pharisees blind and fussy as peeps, maybe singular. Thus one-eyed and furthest finicky is for I see 1 Timothy 4's I've-cited particulars. The one I be to identify if to mainframe in heaven's databases the man-made doctrine and registered. We maintain it, never the world's favorite. Reproach a sign that we give as the Lord gave it. The genes Conley and Judy, the most famous kind of one book, wondering cows of the world sacred. One line quotas, Ephesians 5:18, cap and blasphemy offer continuitized fragrance. 19, 20, 21 submission, sending fish mail with castanets like broken chain emails ending. Empty from E without the bottom line letter in full. Gassed up with no tank top in the pull. Pisa towers tend to linger. Add the E to the hang around, leaning of Victoria's Secret L's in the winter. Think of the letter E and F in beginner. Bring a up of bottom line, double ups are broken for winners. Leaving the L driving, taking plate in the learning, partaking, food for thought, knowing drink don't make you a sinner. The world's pollen and politicking, it smells fragrant, nasal fears, a phantom sensation inhale. Like ice raining, signifying Christ raining, cold shoulders dropping boulders, sublime and vapors escaping directly from solid to gas, but bubbles in water, not a riddle. CO2 in solid state, the smoke settles. 777 up the carbonated, sweet, sour, and bitter. Signs of the times, a taste forever. We'll always remember on earth as heaven and promise. Now as we witness awakenings from dust into righteousness that's amidst us. Kingdom within in the firmament of unition. Weapons of mass construction, God's image, our ammunition. His random access memory overflowing the thickets with his merciful desires despite the darts of the wicked. Thistle or missiles from Sam's sights were still at hand. Armageddon it on in his word out the Peter Pan. Descending blankets of fire, napalming of the lamb. They can't cancel our warfare by a Neverland. Pix Armageddon, Euphrates went Warner Brothers. That's a dry joke to tell a tub evangelists from river runners. Left out the Disney